and welcome to this brand new episode of The Cover, a show where we share with you a sneak peek of the latest Business Today magazine. I'm Sakshi Batra, and with me on this show, I have special correspondents Vidya S. and Prerna Lidhoo, who've done the cover story this time, and we'll be getting into the details of what the cover issue is all about and the other interesting stories in this issue as well. And now to first showcase the cover to all our viewers this time around. This is a special, in fact, business of entertainment special copy where you can actually see the Southern Tsunami and how the Southern movies have actually taken over the box office in a huge way. Now, to understand more about it, Vidya, let me start off with you. I mean, South Indian movies have been on a roll. We actually saw the biggest, the kind of box office hit coming in the shape of Bahubali that started it all off first. And this year we've had Pushpa, RRR, all coming into big phrase. So help us understand, why are these Hindi dubbed South Indian movies performing so well at the box office?
Hi, Sakshi. Thank you for having me over. Yes, one of the most compelling stories in the entertainment landscape today is, especially as the theaters have reopened and are functioning in full swing, the biggest story is, of course, how the South Indian films have been storming the box office with their eye popping collections, right? And not only in the languages of their original release, but they've also been performing phenomenally well in the Hindi market, which is they've been giving a run for the Bollywood films. They've been giving Bollywood films a run for their money with the Hindi dub versions as
Yes.
well. So there are a
Yes.
number of reasons for why this has been happening. One, of course, is how their content and presentation, a
Mm.
storytelling style which appeals to a larger section of the audience,
Mm.
and so with a generous dose of visual effects and action sequences. It helps cater to a larger section of the audience, which Bollywood unfortunately has moved away from in pursuit of the multiplex audience. That's of course
Yeah.
number one. And the second thing is another interesting aspect that we found out as we began speaking to people for this story was about how these films and their stars have cultivated a very loyal fan base on the satellite channels over the past 20-25 years.
Okay.
And of course, this story is incomplete without mentioning the role of Bahubali and the Bahubali films and the team behind it, as they noticed the opportunity in this and through their second marketing technique really opened up the Hindi market for themselves. And of course, KGF, the makers of KGF as well, followed suit, and they also tried a very scientific approach to filmmaking. In fact, through researches and social media analytics and surveys conducted on the ground and other things like that to help present their film, push it further. So, and the results are in front of you to see how well they've performed.
Absolutely. Prerna, let me get you in. I mean, what's interesting to see here is that only three of the top 10 grossers of the last 2 years were Bollywood films. So, where do you really think Bollywood really lost the plot right there? And what can Bollywood really do to reinvent itself now?
Right. You rightly pointed out. Imagine there was a time when I think eight or seven out of top 10 grossers would be
Yeah.
Bollywood films. So there's a clear trend that, Bollywood films are sort of losing the plot somewhere. They need to rethink their strategy. They need to understand the audience better. I think there are two, three key reasons why Bollywood have sort of they don't have the grip, the kind of grip that they had back in the day. One is obviously, like Vidya pointed out, is the our focus on our obsession with building multiplexes. While there's nothing wrong with it, but imagine for a person who was paying rupees 70 for one film, he suddenly has to pay 300, 250, or
Yeah.
250 to 300 bucks. That's a huge jump for him in terms of spending. So as films started catering to multiplex audiences, that shift happened. The flavor of the film, the tonality of the film, the subtlety of the film changed, and it started reflecting those richer, modern, urban audiences. So that is where somewhere it has lost the interest of the masses, which South Indian films have been able to do very well. When you look at movies like RRR, Pushpa, KGF, they are really rooted in Indian stories. They have Indian heroes. They have, the kind of stories that they appeal to, the kind of audiences that they cater to. There's a clear contrast with what Bollywood is doing. Again, there's nothing wrong with it, but you will have to. There's a trade-off with the audience. A Dil Dhadakne Do or a Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara will not have the kind of appeal, mass appeal that movies like KGF or Pushpa command. So I think that is one space there where Bollywood really needs to make its content massy, as well as not dumbing it down for the audiences. I think that's what South Indian films have cracked very well.
Absolutely. Vidya, what about the OTT industry? Has that got a role to play in the kind of, somehow a lower performance of Bollywood we've seen on the multiplexes? Because most of the actors over the last 2.5 years have also explored this aspect as well. We've seen some of the A-class actors exploring web and the OTT platforms rather than going for the big bang, larger than life and big banner films.
Well, that's an interesting trend you pointed out there because the phenomenon of OTTs have actually come to play a big role in the movie production business. As opposed
Hmm.
to pitting one against the other, the trend really is how the entry of OTTs has actually taken some of the risk away from producers. Because now, if you see, a lot of OTT players are more than willing to pay hefty prices to pick up the digital rights of these films before their theatrical release. Somewhere
Hmm.
between 50 and 75% of the producer's budget is now recovered pre-release of the film, which means
Yeah.
that now the theatrical performance or the box office performance is just the icing on the cake for some of the big films or for the medium budget films as well. Of course, this is not applicable to all kinds of films, but this kind of this help that the films or producers get from OTT has certainly opened up the budget. It has certainly increased the budget capacity of these films because now
Hmm.
there's a wider audience for it, and because the risk has cut down substantially because of these, the makers are more confident of taking such bigger risks, and they know that there's a wider audience that they can take their films to. So this is actually
Hmm.
only increasing the budget of the films, as we have seen in the case of the South Indian films. So now it's become very common, or not, if not very common now, but it is certainly becoming a trend where we're seeing regularly films being made on a budget of about 500 crores. It's no longer an outlier. It's becoming the norm now slowly. So it's, for
Absolutely.
instance, the makers of Pushpa is how the sequel, which is scheduled for a release in August 2023, they're looking at a budget of 500 crores easily, where up to 50 crores will be set aside simply for marketing purposes alone. So that's the kind of
Wow.
impact now the this whole phenomenon has had on the filmmaking process.
Okay, understood that. So, Prerna, talk about the expectations from Bollywood and if things can change.
There are serious doubts. Will the upcoming releases be able to capture the kind of audiences that, again, I don't want to compare it with Telugu or Tamil movies, but we
Sure.
always come back to that because they've set the kind of benchmark that they have. So
Hmm.
I again have my serious doubts that they'll be able to do it. Again, I will still bank on Brahmastra or Lal Singh Chadda for certain. Like, it'll have a good pickup in the beginning, but
Hmm.
I don't think they'll be able to cross the kind of collections that Pushpa and KGF did. You also pointed out earlier about when we were talking about OTTs.
Yeah.
Another very important factor in mind to keep in mind when we talk about why Bollywood, like recent bunched up Bollywood films have tanked, is also because during the pandemic, a lot of them had to go to direct to OTT release. And
Hmm.
so that created a lot of gap in terms of content. So now
Yeah.
is the real test for Bollywood. Now there's no dearth of content. Finally, films are releasing. And now is the real test whether Bollywood still has got it or not. So I think it's a very
Do you
interesting
think
time.
Brahmastra will help Bollywood get its mojo back? Because that's also going to be a two-part kind of a big bang movie. It's been talked about so much, and when you talk so much about a movie before it comes, the expectations are high, from this
Yeah.
entire star cast too.
Vidya would disagree with me, but I think Brahmastra can, because it's a big bet. I don't expect the kind of makers that they are to take such a big bet blindly. So I think there'll be something to it. But I know Vidya disagrees with me.
So, Vidya, do you actually disagree with that?
Well, the thing is also it's about the franchisee film becoming the trend now. You see, a lot of films now. I don't know if it's entirely planned or intentional, but certainly filmmakers get into it and realize there's so much more story that they can convey in that film or in the concept that they have. So they venture into franchisee films. So that certainly, like you pointed out rightly, the expectations that the first part creates, and then that opens up that opens up the possibilities and the scope for the second part in the series, a second or
Yeah.
a third part even for that matter, like we've seen in the case of Pushpa, Bahubali films, and now the KGF films as well. And so, well, that is the expectation from the Brahmastra films. Again, it's being set up again as a trilogy. So let's see what it has in store.
Another very important part of this issue is Mr. Rajamouli's interview. And while we are talking about it, I remember asking him that had Bahubali 1 flop, would you still gone ahead and made Bahubali 2? And he said yes. So there's that directors and artists conviction that I would like to bet on, especially when it comes to Brahmas.
Absolutely, hoping for the same to generate the kind of buzz in Bollywood films as well. But many other interesting stories in this cover and in this issue as well. Apart from the cover story that you explore, I mean, there is the short-term OTT platforms and short movies. So help us understand some of those interesting trends that you spotted in this new issue that all the viewers might be interested in reading. So Vidya, you first.
Right. So, entertainment is a very big industry, right? Beyond cinema, we have music, we have cricket, we have, we have so many things and we've tried our best to offer a very comprehensive view on all of those avenues. So we have a story on the streaming or audio streaming platforms that have been coming up. We have a very good story called Fever Pitch on how the sports industry and the sports OTT, how that part of it is shaping up. And there's also the casual gaming side of things and live streaming of games. So there's plenty and more for the readers to understand, and also the whole trend around how India is being a VFX hub today. So yeah,
Yeah.
lots to catch in this issue, especially on the entertainment
Right.
space.
Right. Prerna, which story were you excited about apart from the cover to read in this issue?
There's also a very interesting story that I want to discuss about. It's on the reinvention of Nestle, how as a company it fell down with the Maggie crisis and everything, and how it has been able to, stand up on its feet again, especially beating the pandemic. And there's another story on Baiju's crisis, which again, our young audiences, I think they would want to people who are interested in the startup world and they want to acclimatize themselves with what is happening within behind the scenes with the funding crunch, with the entire allegations that are going on. So I think we've tried to cover things that are happening, newsy issues beyond entertainment as well. So I think it's sort of like a wholesome issue which covers different aspects of entertainment, like you Ravi said, short form videos, VFX, cinemas, etc. And we've gone above and beyond to cover to get you these stories.
So thank you so much, Vidya and Prerna, for being with us and sharing all these insights into the new issue.